All right, welcome to BootUP. This is a new series we're hosting from AWS here on Twitch, and it's really about the startups. Really about the stories about how startups are building, the challenges they went through, and kind of how they're revolutionizing and changing these industries. And I guess let's go around and do some introductions. Today we're focusing on auto tech. So we have two prominent startups from the San Francisco Bay Area here. So yeah, I guess Nikki, do you want to start an intro and then we'll go around?
My name is Nikki. I am a technical evangelist for AWS. You probably have seen me quite a bit on Twitch. I previously founded a startup, so I'm eager to hear their stories. And I would just say the format of this show is engaging. Like, please ask questions for our guests while we're going as many times as you'd like. Don't hesitate to ask something that you'd like to know. Please introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah. Hi, good morning. My name is Shweta. I am VP of Product and Design at NAUTO. So I lead the product management, product marketing, and design functions. And before that, I was actually with Amazon Web Services. So this is homecoming of sorts for me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited about the ability to talk both about NAUTO, but also AWS. So glad to be here.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Sanket. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders at SmartCar. So I work on pretty much everything dealing with the technical and engineering side of things at the company.
Since you two are so, involved in the auto tech scene, like, what's your view of the auto tech space today and kind of how that's evolved over time? Can you give us the lay of the land of where we are?
Yeah, definitely. I think in our view, we always talk about these these four big trends in the automotive world that we see happening. Connected cars, autonomous cars, shared cars, and electric cars. And over time, there's different companies tackling all of these different parts of the industry. You have people like Uber and Lyft tackling shared. You have Tesla tackling electric. You have I don't know how many companies tackling autonomous vehicles. And you have people, someone like us, tackling places in the connected car space and things that fall in the cracks in between those different trends. And we see as things are moving forward, all these are kind of converging together. Cars are not just shared, they're also shared and autonomous, and then shared, autonomous, and electric, and connected, kind of all moving together. And so over time, we kind of think of ourselves as we're working on this one pillar, but eventually we're going to have to interact with all of these others that are coming in.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I completely agree with Sanket. I think we also believe that ACES, which is the short for autonomous, connected, electric, and shared, is
an acronym.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
We're going to
How
learn
cool
a
is
lot
that,
of auto
right?
tech.
I love this.
Yes, ACES, autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. That is the future of urban mobility. However, we also believe that full autonomy, which is also called as level 5 autonomy, fully autonomous self-driving cars, that's still several years away. And so for the next few years, we'll see coexistence of humans interacting with different levels of autonomous cars, right? And so at NAUTO, we have taken that quite seriously. And so before we get to full autonomy, we want to focus on making driving safer and smarter already with the existing vehicles out there.
So yeah, let's dive deeper into what your companies each do and where you fit into the ACES acronym, because I'd love to hear a little bit more. So NAUTO, what do you guys do?
Yeah, so like I said, our mission is to make driving safer and smarter, starting with the commercial fleets today and then autonomous vehicles in the future. In terms of the solution itself, we have a device that's an aftermarket device, and maybe you were seeing the picture. I forgot to get the device itself. And there's also a cloud backend that's built on AWS, right? So we're running artificial intelligence on the device that sits on the windshield of vehicles near the rear view mirror. And it's constantly monitoring for risky situations both on the inside and outside of the vehicle, right? So it's looking at the driver distraction and alerting the driver in real time. We're able to do that because we have artificial intelligence running locally on the device itself, as well as other risky situations like tailgating, right? And we're continuing to build on those capabilities. And our motto here is to prevent collisions before they can even occur,
So
right?
machine learning is like detecting when a driver is like looking down or
Right.
looking away from
Or
the
looking
road.
at a cell phone, looking away from the road. You know, sometimes we see drivers doing paperwork or eating, drinking. We come across a lot of different ways in which the drivers can be distracted, and you know, our own data shows that distraction is the #1 cause of collisions.
Right.
70% of collisions, or close to 70%, are caused by distraction. So we started with that as sort of the key thing to focus on first, but we are building out on those capabilities in terms of real-time alerts. And then in the process, what we're also doing is gathering a lot of intelligence about driving behavior, you know, both good and bad, and collecting real-world data in terms of different driving situations. And that is the basis of our shared safety platform that will help with the development of autonomous vehicles in future.
So can you only get the device if you're a commercial fleet, or like what if like, you know, I have a kid and I want to watch them on the road, whether or not they're alerted in my car?
Yeah, so we are actually focusing on commercial fleets right now, because, you know, that's where we see a lot of the collisions, and the commercial drivers are the ones who drive a lot, right? And so the problems of distraction, drowsiness, fatigue, you know, these tend to occur more with the commercial drivers. So that's where we're focused. But we do get this request a lot. You know, I've got a teenage daughter or a son, and I just want, I just want to make sure that they drive okay. So at least the NAUTO employees are all using the device, and some for that purpose too.
Yeah,
right.
Got it.
And how long was it to get to your first MVP or prototype of this device?
So the company was founded in early 2015. It was founded by Dr. Stefan Heck, who's our CEO. He got his PhD in deep learning, and then he founded the sustainability practice at McKinsey, the consulting company.
Not my company.
Not your company, where he was a director for a number of years. So the company was founded as a result of his vision and passion to make urban mobility safer by leveraging deep learning. And it took us about 2 years to launch the product in the mass market. So the product was officially launched in April 2017. So we've been out in the market for less than 2 years, but we're already into 50 fleets across US, Japan, and Europe. So it's been an exciting ride for us. Yeah.
Fast growth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sanket, let's hear
Smartcar.
your story.
Definitely. So Smartcar is a connected car API platform. What we do is we enable developers to build applications that use simple HTTP requests to interact with the vehicle over the internet, to do things like pull where a car is located, pull its odometer reading, or unlock the doors remotely over the internet. And the way we do this that might be different than the way a lot of other people have approached in the past is we focus purely on vehicles that are already connected to the internet with built-in 4G or 3G modems inside of the cars. So this is something that a lot of people haven't realized, but the vast majority, well over 60-70% of new cars sold on the market today have built-in 4G modems already in the car. But there's still just no easy way for a developer to go get an API key somewhere and then start making requests to a car. And that's where we kind of came in to bridge that gap. So we build our platform to standardize across all the different makes and models of cars. So if you want to pull the location of a BMW versus a Tesla, it's the exact same API. You make the same API call to the Smartcar platform, and you get the same standard response format out.
Super cool.
And so what are some companies that are using Smartcar today? Like, what are some use cases and then how people are leveraging this platform?
So there's a lot of different use cases. From one end, from the really large spectrum of companies, there's people like auto insurance companies who want to do something like offer mileage-based insurance packages. So instead of charging you just a static amount based on how old you are and what city you live in, they want to know how many miles you're driving. It's more likely you're going to get into an accident if you're driving 1,000 miles a month than if your car's just parked in a garage the whole time.
Is that UBI for usage-based insurance?
Exactly.
I'm just
UBI.
throwing in the auto
Exactly.
add that to the list of running.
Exactly. It's UBI. And today the only way that a lot of insurance companies get this data is asking people to self-report. They'll ask people to take pictures of their odometer or call you on the phone and say, hey, how many miles do you think you drove last month? And you'll usually give some sort of estimate, and they often call this even just soft fraud of people not really trying to lie, but just don't really know how many miles they drove. And any type of other solution for them with hardware is just too expensive for a mass market appeal for them to be able to ship to every single insurance holder. But with the platform like Smartcar, they're able to just use simple HTTP requests. There's nothing to install inside of the car. and they're able to pull that odometer reading.
Is there any other data that you can pull using the API? Like, for example, like if my oil light goes on or my engine light goes on, I don't actually know if that's an immediate, that requires an immediate response from me, or if that can wait a month and I can take my car in later.
Exactly, definitely. So there's a lot more we want to expand into. Today we started with a pretty core set of APIs, which were the lock, unlock, odometer, and location that I was mentioning. But our roadmap has everything from what you're mentioning with oil life to battery levels for electric vehicles, fuel tank levels for gas cars. It's all possible. It just takes more work and more people to get it done. But yeah, people like insurance companies. On other side, you can think of people like car rental or car sharing companies who want to be able to, it may even be a small fleet. A company may have a set of 5 or 10 cars they want to let their employees rent out. They can use our platform to build a car sharing app to allow their employees to check out cars and unlock the doors using their cell phone, get in the car and drive it away. And they can set restrictions as to what time of day they're allowed to drive it, things like that. And all the way down to some more fun use cases. We have 3 different apps on the platform right now that do on-demand car washing. It's like on-demand detailing services, and they use us to locate where the car is. They can send a detailer over.
Interesting.
Then they unlock the
really
door,
cool.
clean the inside, lock it up, clean the exterior, and leave.
I'm gonna need one of these, these car washing services.
Exactly. So there's all sorts of cool services like that you can build on the platform.
And what was the, similar question for MVP.
Yeah.
Like, what was the early days like, and how long was it before you had a product that you were able to kind of shop around to investors to get interest?
Yeah, for us, I think we actually raised when the product was in a much earlier stage. I'd say to get it to a real productionized level, if anyone could actually build something on it, took about a year. Probably all of 2015 was taken in just getting the product from being Python scripts on our laptop to being a real running thing on AWS, of course, by the end of the year. But the early days, like how we got started and even figuring this out, was haphazardly, as all good startup stories are.
Right.
My co-founder, who's the CEO of the company, is actually my older brother. And he was already working on a previous startup idea that wasn't going exactly so well and was trying to look for what was next for himself. And I was previously working at LinkedIn on the data science team there. And he would kind of pull me aside at nights and weekends to help ideate and think about something new. And it actually got started with, he was really interested in, AR, VR things as that was coming up, and was also super interested in cars and transportation. But not from the side that most people are interested in cars. Like, neither of us have been gearheads. We don't have wallpapers of cars at home or anything. But he was the guy at high school who'd go to dealerships to see, like, what new infotainment system is in the car, which car has Bluetooth on it, and which one has an aux jack. Like, that's what he was always interested in. And a family member had gotten a Tesla Model S, so he started getting excited when he saw the huge, massive screen inside, had a full web browser, and ended up figuring out that not only could you browse the web from inside the car, but you could also send commands to it over the internet. So he took like 2 and 2 and put together, and he got his hands on a pair of Google glasses to learn more about the AR VR space, combined it with the Tesla, and after a couple, weekends of making his own hackathon for himself, he built this app he called Glass Tesla, where he could say like, okay, Glass, where's my car? Okay, Glass, like start the climate control.
Oh my God, that's really cool.
It was hilarious. We thought there'd be like 5 people who'd sign up to use this, but there were surprisingly, I think, 300 people in that overlap who used both a Google Glass and a Tesla Model S in 2014.
That's actually not surprising.
It's one of those like surprising, not surprising facts, right?
So a lot of startups start with one of these hack projects and turn into a business. How do you know that this project is an actual, profitable business? What's the deciding factor?
For us, it was ideating beyond that. It was that once we launched this glass thing for Tesla, we started getting messages from people on the internet who saw this through news articles and stuff, asking, why does this only work on Tesla? Why can't it work on my BMW or my Lexus or whatever other car they had? And we went, that's a good question. Why doesn't it work on all those other cars? And before we knew it, we found that, hey, all these other cars are connected too. we should be able to expand this glass app to work across all of them. But then started looking deeper into the real problem, and we saw, hey, it's not the glass app that was the killer use case here, but the fact that there's no API that exists. And we thought, what if we did that? What if we just build the API platform layer, and anyone who wants to build anything from a glass app to, I don't know, car washing startup could do so on top of us. And it was really hitting that point where we realized that there is real customer use cases that can be built on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to provide the enterprise perspective because, ours is a product that's focusing on the enterprise customers. So we very much follow the working backward from, customer.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar, yeah. No
I've heard that
coincidence
one
there.
before.
At NAUTO as well. And so, we are engaged with our customers very closely, we're monitoring their fleets. We've got a web application, again, built on AWS, where we can look at, how the distraction and other events are trending for this particular customer and, where the product is really working well versus where it's not, and, how we can improve both in terms of the AI capabilities as well as in terms of the hardware capabilities. And the good thing is that we can push a lot of those capabilities out to the customers over the air, right? So it doesn't really require us to, get the device back or something, right? So we're constantly, rapidly innovating. I said that the first version of our product came out in April 2017. We're already on to the next generation.
Wow.
And then there was a version 0 also purely based on phone app, but then we quickly realized that there are real technical limitations in terms of power usage and compute usage, if you were to run AI, the kind of stuff that we do natively on the phone, right? So that was our version 0. Then our version 1 was, Gen 1 was the device that we launched in April 2017, and we're already on to the next generation.
So you knew you wanted to build this enterprise product. You know it was a physical device you want to eventually develop. But how do you go from idea to doing research of the market and knowing whether that's a direction that makes sense?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, as a startup, it's not a one-time process, right? And I guess this is probably true of most companies, even if you're not a startup, right? You're constantly, it's about putting an MVP, and at Amazon, I think we used to call it most lovable product because MVP is not good enough. So putting an MLP out there, as soon as possible, and Reid Hoffman, who's one of our investors and board member at NAUTO, he always says, if you are not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late, right? So it's putting that minimal viable or lovable product out there, and then gathering quick customer feedback and making continuous improvements to the product, right? So talking to the customers in our case, and we have, because we're in the enterprise fleets, and we're still small, we do get a lot of feedback directly from the customers, and at the same time, keeping an eye on the industry in terms of where ACES is heading, and where we fit into that ecosystem. So.
How did you guys originally decide to go for enterprise customers instead of just the consumer that I mentioned that wants their car, whoever's driving it watched?
No, that's a very good question, right? And there was a lot of thought that went into it. Like I said, Stefan, who's the founder of the company, is really driven by them, and the entire company now is really driven by the mission to reduce the number of collisions, right, and to have the biggest impact that we can on reducing the number of accidents and collisions and making our roads safer. And so we looked at all different, market segments and verticals that we could focus on, including consumer. And the finding was it's really the commercial fleets where, they are accumulating a lot of the driving miles, and that's where you run into real, the most problems, and that's where we can have the biggest impact right off the bat, right? So, so that was sort of the.
What are some, one of the issues with startups is you're so strapped for resources.
Right.
So what are some inexpensive ways that your companies or you've seen other companies conduct this type of research or feedback from customers? Like, how do you recommend people do this if they're limited financially?
Honestly, we found that getting customer research doesn't have to cost that much. It's the cost of some drinks and pizzas at an event. At our investors, we borrowed our investors' office space at NEA over in San Francisco a couple months ago, and we did a user research feedback event where we did a demo. We had a bunch of focus small groups that broke out. I mean, all the user experience researchers were just ourselves as the engineers on the team. Had a couple easel boards with paper on it. Had everyone try to go through a demo and then ask them a bunch of questions, and it was so useful.
Right.
Just basic things that we took for granted in the product that we thought just made sense on the dashboard or the sign-up flow or anything was just shattered when we saw someone sit there, mess up 3 times in a row, and then we went, oh crap, we have to go fix this.
Yeah.
So how much of your pipeline is now dictated by that user feedback?
We need to do more of them. I think the bigger cost maybe than the cost of doing it itself is like the time cost of everyone in the team, because it takes time to plan, to prep for it, invite people to it, get enough people coming to the event, and then debriefing afterwards, that I felt like it was almost a multi-week ordeal of making sure this event goes well. That I think that's the bigger cost than like the raw money cost of like actually putting resources into the event itself.
Yeah. If I may add a couple of things to that, so dog fooding is extremely important,
exactly.
right? So every single NAUTO employee is expected to have one of the device, a device in the car, and so we are experiencing the product firsthand too, right? Both the real-time alerts that we hear from the device, as well as we, make extensive use of the fleet application, as well as we have a mobile app version of that for the end users. So we are looking at, what was this risky event that I caused, or we have a proprietary risk scoring called Vera that we can all track for ourselves. So dog fooding is extremely important, I think. And then the other thing is instrumentation, right? Just collecting a lot of data. So we gather a lot of data about the usage of the device, as well as the data that's being captured by the device, right? So, and we take that into account as we look into trends and what's being used, what's being effective, what's not being very effective with the customers, and then take that feedback and incorporate that into the roadmap.
So that's interesting. How do you weigh what the data says you should be doing, what the customer's asking for, right? Because you want to be customer centric, but what do you do when it conflicts?
So this is classic product management conundrum, right? You have to, you have to look at the data, and a lot of times, I mean, I wouldn't say that data is conflicting what the customer is asking for, but you would have, I think, where the challenge is, you would have 1 or 2 large customers asking for something that's specific to them, that might not be reflected in the demands from the broader set of customers. And there, I think, it's, again, whether you're a big company or a small company, this is about then making that judgment call and figuring out, how important that customer is to you strategically, and whether that really helps drive your mission forward, and then what is the ROI of developing that particular feature or capability for that customer, right?
See, it's secondhand to you because you're experienced at doing this. There's a lot of people who this is their first time trying to build this product, and this information is super valuable for them.
I think there's also even a third angle of like the customer is the data, but at the very early stage, it's as a founder what you envision the world to be like.
Right.
Because you bringing something into the world, it's not necessarily that someone has thought of before in the past, which is why you're doing a startup, right? Because you envision there's a new way that things should be done, or a new way the world should be working that doesn't exist yet. And as a lot of startup advice goes, I think Reid Hoffman also says this: if too many people say your startup's a good idea, it's probably not a good idea.
That's really
some people need to be saying that it's a bad idea, because then you're onto something that other people aren't onto. You're thinking about something a little bit differently, and you have to weigh, not getting too full of yourself with that, and weigh that with like the data and the customers that are coming in. So you need to be maybe a couple steps ahead with your thinking, but then also make sure that the way you're going is starting to resonate with people over time.
That's right.
So how did you guys start building on AWS? Like, you have a lot of data now that you've collected. Did you start off second one from collecting all that data? Because I know architecture evolves over time, and for my startup, we initially weren't tracking the right metrics, and then we had to change things up in the middle. So how did that process evolve, or where did you begin?
So for us, our business is fundamentally hinged on really being able to derive insights from vast amounts of data. Right. So from the onset, and given our focus on commercial and enterprise fleets, from the onset we needed a cloud backend that was highly scalable, reliable, secure, and has the breadth and depth of services that AWS offers, right? So we started our journey with AWS, given that we understood how our requirements were going to evolve, and AWS still has remained the primary cloud provider for us. And in terms of architecture, obviously, any startup would start with the fundamental or the foundational compute and storage service. So,
Right.
so do we. We use EC2 for compute, and S3 is our main online storage and data lake. And then over time, we have added other services as our needs, technical and business needs, evolved, right? So, and we're always looking out for newer services that get announced from AWS. The new machine learning services, I guess it's not new anymore. SageMaker is something that we're now, evaluating for training our models. We're actually using it. We use the GPU clusters also for building AI capabilities.
Nice.
And then we also have a gamut of RDS Postgres for operational database, Elasticsearch for indexing, et cetera. And yeah, it's really, as our business needs evolve, we look at what else is out there from AWS, yeah.
For those unfamiliar with SageMaker, can you talk about why it's beneficial to your teams? And
Yeah, so we take a very pragmatic approach. For us, the core competence and the core focus really is to develop AI capabilities that make driving safer, right?
Yep.
That's what we want to be in the business of doing, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to be in the business of having to set up infrastructure and maintain it and administer
Yeah.
it. And so we will look for, capabilities or technologies which help us really focus on our core application that we want to deliver to the customers. So when SageMaker came out, that definitely seemed like a service where we could, quickly set up our models and train our models as opposed to having to worry about, setting up the infrastructure itself. So
For those not familiar, SageMaker is one of our machine learning services at AWS that will help a developer easily build, train, and deploy a model. And people that are just starting out in machine learning are able to actually use SageMaker to deploy and build models, and we have templates and examples and a lot of good stuff.
we found that a lot of teams try to build this whole pipeline themselves.
Right.
And then they
Yeah.
run the terrible mistake. They realize that they spin up this massive cluster to do the training, and then they forget about it for a couple days. And, SageMaker will automatically tear that down afterwards, keep your costs down,
That's right.
which is super helpful.
Yeah.
Especially if you're strapped for cash as a startup.
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, no, it's all about
What did you guys
ROI.
do before SageMaker?
We had an on-prem pipeline, which we have been slowly moving to AWS. Yeah, so now we're using the GPU clusters from EC2, and we're also now starting to test elastic inference.
Inference, I was going to say,
yeah,
elastic inference.
Yeah, so which sounds very promising. So I know that the team is evaluating that too. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, AWS was also actually probably our first, I'd say, production cloud that we had set up. Before then, mostly things were running off laptops and running off maybe single EC2 boxes where we're prototyping things.
And a Google Glass.
And a Google Glass, of course. But when we actually went out to set up a real production cloud, ended up going with AWS for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. We had a philosophy of let's manage as little as possible in what we do. But at the same time, we also wanted the platform to be modular enough where we could run things off our own computers when we needed to. And with AWS, we found that nice balance where things like RDS can wrap Postgres, so Postgres can just run on your computer, but it can also run on AWS managed for you. Elasticache takes care of Redis for us, and Redis can also be run on our computer. And we weren't using necessarily a proprietary service, but at the same time, you kind of got this hybrid of both worlds. And that was, I think, a huge sell for us to end up going with AWS to continue using open source, but have someone else take care of managing it for us because we didn't want to have the resources to actually take care of that. And so we've utilized a lot of AWS services since then. And I think another big requirement early on was, maybe it wasn't a huge requirement, but we wanted everything to be Dockerized. We were a fully Node.js stack, but we knew that that may not stay that way forever. And as new services that we build come out or new requirements that we have, we want to be able to be modular enough to switch out. And we didn't want to have to rebuild our entire cloud stack every time. And AWS was one of the early players in offering full Docker support, which ended up, meeting our needs as well.
I mean, it's wild to think that if you were trying to build either of these companies 5-10 years ago, you would have a team dedicated to running this infrastructure.
100%.
And now it's just developers can get one of these products off the ground quickly and easily.
Right.
Yep. No, it's crazy how much the barrier to entry has dropped for that.
Absolutely.
Even the complexity of stack that we have today, which isn't insanely complex, 5-10 years ago would have had us in a server room wiring cables around.
Which is fun in a small amount of time.
Really small doses.
Yeah.
Extremely small doses.
No, I'm definitely glad that I chose this time to join a startup and not 5 years earlier.
When we moved to our newest office, we wired all the Wi-Fi access points and routers set up ourselves, and that was more than enough for me dealing with networking.
Hilarious. Do you either your companies host like hackathons in your company? How do you keep innovation and new ideas coming within your products?
So we've done a lot of hackathons actually this year. I think we've had 8 scheduled. We've been to about 4 or so far. These aren't internal company hackathons, but these are going out to universities or different places out. Like we did one went to API World, which was a conference last year, and a number of other ones have been. That's it. Some focused on just Smartcar. We did one at the Hackbright Academy in SF last year as well, and others just university hackathons.
Can you also touch on the Smartcar Garage program for early stage startups? I saw that on your website, and I'm wondering if this plays into what you're talking about.
No, definitely. So what we do is we set up a Smartcar Garage program, similar to like an AWS Ignite or something like that, or Activate, sorry, AWS Activate program that allows startups getting off the ground to get a huge number of free requests and some on-the-ground support from us. We found that as developers are building beyond just the hackathon stage, they want access to real vehicles. But if they're students or people who don't have access to tons of vehicles to test on, they could come by our office and debug with our engineers and work on real cars and get off the ground without having to worry about their bill immediately.
That's awesome. So if you're building an early stage startup that's taking advantage of the Smartcar API.
Yeah, but we found hackathons to be super useful in the type of ideas that come out of it and the different things that people will build in just such a short period of time. Some interesting highlights. We saw someone did a car sharing platform through the blockchain at a hackathon where you had to pay money to a certain Bitcoin wallet address or is an Ethereum wallet, so a smart contract would kick off in a request to unlock the doors of the car using the Smartcar API. And so it was transactionally backed by the blockchain, whether or not your car gets unlocked or not.
So that could take like a couple hours if the Ethereum network is clogged up for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. But cool prototypes that come out of it.
Sure.
And definitely creates a lot of, that's it. From one side, it's the ideas. The other side, it's the user testing. We talked about cheap ways of doing user testing again. No better way than having 1,000 students trying to hack on your platform in 24 hours to find every little documentation bug and every UX bug in your platform.
Oh man.
How do you recommend startups finding these hackathons to participate in? Like, if I have a product and I want to get in on this, what's that process like? Where do you find these, and how do you get selected? How do you make a good case that you should be presenting at this conference or event?
For hackathons, we actually have a blog post up on our blog of why early stage startups should go to hackathons that we just published a couple weeks ago. So
love that.
Anyone's interested should go read that.
And it's Smartcar, or what's the
blog? It's a smartcar.com/blog.
Perfect. That's easy.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat.
That wasn't planned. I didn't know that blog post actually existed. It just naturally.
Yeah. But your question of how to get into them, I think the big thing is for students or whoever at these hackathons, they want some excitement. They want something interesting, something different that they wouldn't have dealt with before.
Yeah.
So something we do is we always bring a car to a hackathon. And we leave the car there 24 hours overnight. And we'll even do something like leave a prize in the front seat and say whoever unlocks the door first gets to have this prize.
That's so cool.
Interesting.
And
where are you next? I want to go to this next hackathon.
I'm getting some ideas there too. Yeah.
Yes. I think we were. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying I'm getting some ideas from you.
Yeah.
We do hackathons have been mostly internal so far, but I think leaving a car and having people sort of do interesting things with that is definitely a cool idea. I think it is also very important from the perspective of actually motivating the developers, in the company, because again, when you are in a startup phase, in a hyper-growth phase, it's very easy to get bogged down by, hey, there's this customer issue, and then there's that bug, and then there's this new feature that I need to release,
Right.
blah, blah, right? And you can constantly be working 24/7 just on that stuff. And I think Hackathon, what we have realized in our company it gives them that out a little bit, right? To
Focus on innovation.
Focus on innovation and work on creative ideas. And
Yeah.
we also actually ended up incorporating quite a few ideas that came out of Hackathon, the last Hackathon, into the product roadmap, right? So sometimes the best ideas really come from there and not necessarily a bunch of product managers, thinking about cool new things that we can do for the customers.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I completely
think
agree. We've done
we should probably
one
up the
internal
number of
hackathons
we do.
before, and we need to up those too. But I think the other thing we get from external hackathons is getting our engineers on the team who go to these to
Right.
see the public face and actually talk with people who are using the platform. I think you often get so bogged down, as you said, as
Right.
with the little immediate features, the little bugs that you're fixing and worrying about on a day-to-day, that you forget the larger picture of that excitement on someone's face
Right.
when they unlock the car for the first time and how cool it is and how interested people are on building on the platform. And when you get engineers to go out to these hackathons, they get to actually talk with the customers face to face. And I think that's just a huge value add for the team.
Yeah.
So you touched on one of the things that when you're working in a startup, there's just a never-ending amount
Right.
of things to do.
Right.
How do you guys get through the tough times? And I would describe working in a startup as the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So what do you guys do to celebrate the good times, and how do you get through the low times?
So I'm going to quote Reid Hoffman again at the risk of sounding like a fangirl.
It's fun. I worked at LinkedIn for 2 years, so I'm also a fanboy.
So, he has launched this book called Blitzscaling, right, which is all about how startups can scale at enormous speeds. And then the number one rule of Blitzscaling is embrace chaos, right? So not just learn to live with chaos, which is going to happen in a startup, but
Absolutely.
actually just embrace it, right? Take it as something that doesn't hinder with your, you expect, and you can work around it and work with it.
Thrive in chaos.
And thrive in chaos, right? So I think that's very important, right? Anybody who, it's very easy, and I worked at AWS, and before that I worked with other large companies, so it's a different, you're used to a certain level of system and processes, around you, and then startup, you can be completely, it's not quite that way, right? So first time founders or people who've transitioned into startups from large companies can get bogged down pretty quickly. And it's a learning process to really understand that, things will change. Expect them. If your roadmap stays the same for 3 months at a time,
There's a problem.
there is a problem. You got to be flexible. You got to be nimble. And so, I think coming from AWS, though, AWS is like a collection of startups,
Yes,
though, right?
I would agree.
So I would say that is an exception because it did prepare me in a number of ways to, make this transition into the startup world. But again, there's definitely more chaos there, and it's just something that you love to embrace. The other thing, and this is something that I definitely experience a lot as a head of product, and I would probably share with others as well, is it is very important to, as a startup, you'll come across a lot of opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Everything, and until you found that product market fit, or even after you have, right? Every opportunity seems like it's worth pursuing because
Yeah.
it can,
Because you don't know what's going to happen.
because you don't know what's going to happen.
Possibilities are endless.
Right. But it's important to make sure that you focus. You have limited resources, and you have to be judicious with the use of those resources and time. And so it's as important to say no to the wrong kind of opportunities as it is to say yes to the right kind of opportunities. And this to me as a head of product is sort of, I take that as a personal responsibility. This is my day-to-day life, I would say. Yeah.
No, I completely agree with the last point you're saying as well, especially about how at the early stage there's often a lot of opportunities that
Right.
you'll get that come up that are in the short term look like big wins for yourself, that you can do some sort of consulting opportunity or do some professional services here and there, and someone will always want to, you have a smart team, you have good people, they'll want something to be built by your team.
Right.
And you have to notice which one of these are actually putting us on a path towards something that's more long-term, more recurring, or what are we doing that might just be that's only 3-month gain, and then again we're stuck again. And so you have to kind of value that when you look at external opportunities coming in a lot. And I think to your point about the good times versus the bad times, I think what we found is like you do have to celebrate the good times and make sure that people have fun, go out to a dinner, like do an offsite, do something exciting and re-energizing for the team. And even in the bad times too, to basically acknowledge the fact that this is bad, something bad is going on, but never dwell too long on either side. And it's a concept that at LinkedIn they called next play, which was the idea that whenever anything bad or good happen is you like take a moment, reflect on it, and then you move on. You don't dwell too long on the wins, and you don't dwell too long on the failures.
That's very Zen thought.
That's a very Zen way to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And when they IPO'd at LinkedIn, all their T-shirts said "Next Play" on it, and it was, guys, we IPO'd, but that's not good enough. Like now we're going to the next thing, and that's what we often say.
I wonder if that's from sports.
It does. It comes from the Duke basketball coach, actually, who would say this in sports. But we would often say this internally at the company when we do have a bad event happen. We say, okay, guys, let's acknowledge this happened, but now it's all moving forward. What do we do next? How do we fix this? What do we go from here? And if something good happens, it's also the same thing. Okay, like this is great. We accomplished this. This is awesome. But now what's next? Like we're not satisfied just staying right here. And I think that's
an awesome way to think about
definitely.
things.
User Slat2 is curious about your monthly costs on AWS. You're using a large number of services. What's your spend look like? How's that grow with your business? And then with the decreases in prices that happen across services, does that mean now you have extra money that you're putting towards new services, or do you just accept the decreases and say, great, we're saving on the monthly bill? How do you take advantage of kind of the lower costs? What does that provide your companies?
Good question.
Loaded questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, very loaded question.
For us, our AWS spend is not insane yet. We're around maybe about 1,000 or so a month for our services. And for us, it's not a linear scale, though, because there's a lot of stuff that gets set up that, say you have a load balancer. A load balancer, you don't need to have multiple load balancers. You have one, and you can have many instances behind that load balancer. So the scale is on per EC2 instance that's coming on after that. So we found that there is a good, to get a new, that's a VPC or virtual private cloud setup, there's an initial spend of like kind of getting the framework of everything set up, but then scaling for more traffic beyond that is actually like at a much slower rate than you would expect. It doesn't just go from 1,000 and double every month after that. But instead it's based on what type of instances we're using, and if we actually start using things like reserved instances, that actually saves us even more money. When you realize when you have a business that's running at production, you're not swapping out your instances every single day, that you're probably going to have a good pool of instances on each of your services just statically staying there. And so you might as well pay for reserved pricing on that. Pay it up front. You get a pretty big discount on it. And so we found that that's helped out quite a bit. In terms of with our savings, what do we do with the money? I think some ways we have thought about it is what other services we might want to use, whether it's within AWS or not, whether it's some new metric tracking service or new BI or analytics tool or something like that. We want to keep our whole DevOps pricing budget under one kind of umbrella of money. And if the AWS cost goes down, then we can either expand on AWS. Some things that we've been trying to do is set up new QA, new staging environment, so we have the ability to be testing multiple things at the same time, and we can do that with lower spend on AWS, or potentially find other services and tools, a new CI system or something that's useful for the team, and bring that in.
Or maybe incorporating a little machine learning or something.
Yeah, exactly. Some SageMaker maybe.
Yeah, SageMaker ground truth. That's the other one that we want to test. Our spend has been growing, and I don't think I can quote a specific number. It's definitely more than $1,000 a month, and it has been consistently growing. But very much to Sanket's point, it is not linear in terms of what you get out of a given service, right? So on a per device basis is how we track the AWS spend, right? And that is coming down, right? So that's more important, to make sure that your AWS cost at scale is coming down. Although on an absolute scale, on an absolute basis, that number is going up every month because we've got more customers, more devices, more data coming in.
It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. But we track, what is our AWS cost per device, and that is coming down. And at scale, we expect it to be pretty good.
What are some ways that you optimize your costs or reduce your costs? It's very easy to spin up a lot of stuff that have access to all these resources. But we don't want that from the AWS side. We want to make sure that you have the longest runway possible for your company. So what are some ways internally that you keep an eye on the spend and keep it under control?
I think using the cost explorer and looking at the bills is one good way. And using things like auto scaling groups that automatically scale down and scale up at the same time has been another way that's been helpful. But I think the biggest way, honestly, is it sounds more manual, but keeping track of what is being created and not created. And one way that a side effect of what we do is we don't actually directly ever leave any resource running that we've created from the console on AWS, but we use Terraform to programmatically create everything. And so if we kind of hold ourselves through that philosophy, we know every commit that's gone into our repo on our Terraform files, and we know when it's been created, and if we do want something to be spun down, we can create an issue or a ticket saying that we created this, here's the commit when we created this, spin this down at this later date.
You have complete version control of your infrastructure.
And then we can just revert that out of the Terraform file at some point later in the future and then spin it down. And I think that's probably been the best way we've been able to keep a hold of knowing what all we're running inside of AWS.
Right.
I'm kind of fascinated that both of your startups are, you're tackling these massive enterprises, this massive auto tech world. These large companies have been around for many, many years. What's that like being a small startup or small player originally? I mean, it's obviously grown since then, but the very first couple of years or first 3 or 4 years, what's that like having to face these Goliaths? And did they take you seriously? Did it take time to earn respect? Like, what was that like?
It's hard work. it's not easy by any means. I think as a startup, what's going for you is the pace of innovation, right? And the nimbleness and the flexibility which sometimes large companies, except if you're AWS, are not really, they can't really innovate that quickly. They can't move as quickly. And I think startups should use that as much to their advantage as possible, right? So. I think one of the key differentiators for our product is the ability to run AI on the device and alert the driver in real time, which is somewhat unique to us, right? And we are able to do that because we can take a fresh look at the market needs, and we can start from scratch, and we can make changes quickly, and we can innovate rapidly, and having a cloud backend that scales with your needs and that's as flexible as you need it to be also is very, very helpful there, right? So. Yeah,
no, I think for us, what was the question you're trying to get at, I guess?
So it's, I mean, you're...
Is it intimidating, I guess, to feel like you're entering into an industry that's existed for, a lot of years now, and
I think
how do you communicate with the bigger companies?
I think the early stage, at the really early stage, it definitely can be a little bit when you're building up something. And to your point, I think it feels that, sometimes we've often felt that we're moving too slow. But when you look relative to some of the bigger companies and you end up talking with some of the bigger companies, they end up looking at it and go, how did you build all of this in 6 months or in 1 year? And we thought, we were going slow. I thought we were taking a really long time
then
to
you
ship
feel better about yourself.
Feel a little bit better about yourself. But I think
But don't get too comfortable.
No, don't get too comfortable with it. But know that is your biggest advantage, I guess, is the pace that you can move at. And I think it's building a product that they're not able to, right? And I think it is intimidating at first to be going up against these large businesses, but the fact that you're able to come up with this idea, build a team together, ship a product, and make something that they weren't able to produce in that fast of time, I think is something that you end up getting comfortable with, and people who look at your business, whether they're an insurance company or any other developer trying to use us, they look at us and they look at the product, and the product speaks for itself in terms of the quality of what we've been able to produce. And if you're able to put together that right story, the pitch, and the whole product journey around it, I think that's the most important piece.
And what about your current competitors? Like, how do you see yourselves all fitting into the current landscape, or how do you interact or communicate with competitors? I felt like when I was, a founder, competitors were actually constantly reaching out. How do you approach those conversations, and how do you see everybody fitting in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for us, we found a lot of the competitors have been approaching the market in a very different way than we have, and focusing on a different segment, and focusing on, similar with the hardware approach, on vehicles that are not connected to the internet just yet. And so we kind of found a niche that we found works for us, and we found that was important to us, which was the cars that are already connected to the internet. And so that's really what we've, I think, focused on. And I think the other piece that we focused on that I think other competitors may still be working towards is really focusing on developers, making this a self-service experience, a self-service journey. I mean, us as founders, we weren't people from the car space. We were engineers who had used APIs our whole lives. We had used Twilio, we had used Stripe and PayPal and any other API out there, and we wanted to build that exact same type of experience and feeling on Smartcar. And I think that's something different that we hadn't seen competitors kind of build a experience in that way.
Yeah, again, to add to what Sanket said, one of the key learnings for me personally has been to focus a lot more on customers than on competitors, right? And also choose your competitors wisely, right? So a lot of large companies, especially in telematics, right? We're not a telematics device. We're focused on driver safety. For somebody who doesn't know the space very well, can easily think of NAUTO as a telematics competitor, but we're not. We want to partner with the larger companies wherever it's possible and makes sense, right? To make 1 + 1 = 3, right? So choosing competitors wisely and focusing on customers are other things that
I definitely agree with that, the choosing customer or competitors wisely, because I think there's so much noise in the space.
That's right.
That the way people market themselves or different companies market themselves can end up looking like a lot of overlap, like overlapping NAUTO with the telematics competitor, which isn't necessarily the case. So it's up to you to kind of define who you actually are and where you fit into that competitive marketplace.
So Tumbles, which I love that name, by the way, is curious about, are either of your companies leveraging serverless in any way? Have you looked at that? Has that changed the way you're developing? You talk a little bit about your serverless usage.
Yeah, so we have definitely looked at it, and we have been using it for testing new capabilities quickly. So it's definitely something that we use, obviously much less compared to some of the other core services that I talked about. But Lambda is very exciting, and it's a developer's friend in terms of being able to test capabilities quickly.
Yeah, Lambda's my favorite.
We've used it in a couple different use cases. We used it to prototype some applications. We built a chatbot to chat with the car at one of the hackathons on top of Lambda. It was just really easy to deploy in a service like that. We've used it. We actually currently use it for an API monitoring service. We combine it with CloudWatch events to kind of use a cron job that schedules to call this Lambda and wakes up every few minutes, that hits up our APIs in production, monitors, gets back response codes across a ton of vehicles in our test fleet, and then stores that data in Dynamo, I believe. And we use that to monitor on a regular basis whether or not services are running, and if anything fails, it shoots a message into Slack, and we get alerts in a channel saying that something's went down.
So to tie that back to the cost topic from before, you talk about kind of the cost benefits, advantages of using serverless over other methods of compute.
Yeah, if we wanted to run something like that Lambda service without using Lambda, that would require an EC2 instance or some box that is running 24 hours to be hitting up our services. And this was just a lot easier to not have to deal with that. And I think the deploy model is interesting too. I think if we were using kind of an EC2 machine or something like that, maybe that was okay with cost, but in addition to that, you would have to find out, how are you going to deploy to this box? Are you going to start going back to using some Chef Puppet thing? Are you building a full Docker production workflow just for having an API monitoring service? Are you going to have load balancers? Like, it's just a lot of work to create a clean deploy pipeline.
Work and cost.
Work and cost in doing that. With AWS, with Lambda, it is just a couple command line calls to push up a new bundle up to spin up a new Lambda, which is really nice.
Really awesome for sure.
Yeah.
Are you guys taking advantage of serverless, or have
you? We are, like I said, and it's on the increase. It's definitely not. I think we can do more with it. That's the short answer. But in terms of keeping the cost under control, the other lever is definitely looking at for your database services, for example, going self-managed versus using RDS, right? And in our case, we definitely, given that we don't have any database administrators and we want to be able to focus purely on our application, the RDS route has been more cost effective.
Definitely.
You actually have a demo.
Yes, I do. I could.
And I feel like we can't have a show AWS without showing some code or building something. Yeah, could we go through the demo?
Yeah, I
Let's see if we can get that up on the
me,
screen.
Let me know when you're ready, and I have my computer up here. I also have my Cloudcraft diagram as well.
And what kind of demo are you going to be doing today?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is kind of a full end-to-end self-service of I'm going to sign up for an account on Smartcar's dashboard, create a new account, then I'm going to go down and with some code and create a Python Flask web app to authorize a vehicle, authorize a Tesla Model S to connect with our application, and then we'll pull the location of the car remotely.
Perfect.
Awesome.
We can see your screen,
This is
so
awesome.
that's a warning and also a signal that.
Perfect. So to start off, the first thing you need to do when you come to Smartcar is press sign up and create a new account on our dashboard.
Oh, wait, are we seeing the right? I don't think
Yeah,
we're
there's
seeing
a little bit of a delay.
Oh, got
There's,
it. That's
okay,
why.
cool. So first thing I'm going to do is sign up with a new username and password. We're going to do Sandcat Plus.
Oh, we're not seeing it yet. Hang
Oh,
on.
you're not seeing it yet.
Do your mirror display. I think it's
Oh.
splitting the
Double, yeah.
Tell me when if this is working.
Let's see.
You're good to go.
I'm good to go. Okay, so just to recap, I just went to smartcar.com and I pressed sign up for free to create a new account on our dashboard. Cool. And then I'm just going to create a new, call it Sandcat Plus Twitch at smartcar.com.
That link, by the way,
call
I'm
it-
going to post it in the chat if you guys wanted to create an account.
I'm going to make my name Twitch.
Also, 01 Polak said props for having Ubuntu.
Awesome. Cool. So once I log in here, what we're going to see is we have a client ID and client secret that's associated with my application. SmartCar does a fully OAuth 2 based flow, and so those who are familiar with OAuth 2 will know what client ID, client secret, and redirect URIs are. And up here we see that we've created an app called Twitch's First App. And what I'm going to do is add a redirect URI in here. So SmartCar knows where to send authorization codes to. And since we're running this off my computer, I'm just going to do localhost 8000, and I've got a route called callback there. And I'll hit save. Cool. So in order to actually figure out how to integrate with the API, you can go to the documentation center, which there's a link right there, but also at smartcar.com/docs. And we have getting started guides of going through the whole authorization flow using the different SDKs. Even our API reference here will go into each of our different endpoints and things that we have available. So for example, what we're going to do today is pull the location, which you can see here is a simple HTTP GET request to our API. Got an vehicle ID in the parameter string there. We've got an authorization header with the access token in it, which is what we get through the OAuth 2 flow.
Super clean docs.
Yep, and we've got the clean JSON response, the latitude, longitude, and we're going to have to ask for the read location permission from the user to be able to get access to this. And since I'm going to use the
Driving the
Python
car.
SDK, we can click on that and we'll see it's as simple as just calling a vehicle.location method call. So cool. So if we get started, I have some code already written out, and so I'm going to copy this client ID and secret over to our terminal over here.
Old Senile wants to know if these are Swagger docs.
The documentation is actually built by ourselves using a tool called DocBox.
DocBox.
On the API reference, the overall SmartCar Doc Center itself was actually completely built in-house using Gatsby.js with React.
Love Gatsby.
It is pretty cool. Cool. So can you guys see the code on the screen right there?
Yeah.
Cool. So what I've done is just copy pasted the client ID and secret, and we've got a Python Flask app here. And the first thing I'm going to do is just import SmartCar and then import Flask as well and some other dependencies. Then after that, we're going to create a new instance of our SmartCar auth client and pass in our client ID, our secret. Here's the redirect URI that we registered earlier. And then we have to ask for the scope or permissions we're going to request of the user. And so we have read vehicle info. Location was the one that we actually really cared about to pull the location of the car. And the read odometer as well I have in here. Now next, I'm just opening up a new Flask server, really simple. And then I'm going to do the simplest templating system I know possible, which is a string. And we're just going to call client.getAuthURL to get the URL that I need to link a user to from my application to go through the SmartCar authorization flow. And we just have a simple H1 tag that says hello Twitch, and that button I'm going to create that's called connect car is going to get that auth URL. Next, we're just going to create this callback route, which is where we told Smartcar to send the authorization code to. And we're going to exchange it for an access token, and I'm just going to print it to the console and send it back to the browser, so we should see it on the browser as well.
Cool.
And finally, very simple, run it on port 8000. So I can just run Python app.py over there, and we see, okay, it's running on localhost 8000, and we can go over there. Cool, there we go, hello Twitch. So now what I'm going to do is, switch roles. I'm now a owner of a vehicle. I'm coming to this app called Hello Twitch. It could be a car sharing app, or it could be whatever car washing app that I want to give access to my car. And so what I have to do in order to give Twitch access to my car is press this connect car button.
Okay.
This is a simple OAuth 2 flow. You've probably clicked on a connect with Google button before, or a connect with Twitter something button before. Very similar. And so the first thing it's going to ask me to select the brand of car that I own. I'm going to say I have a Tesla.
Pretty cool.
And then it's going to bring me over to the Tesla login screen. And what I'm going to log in with here is I'm going to log in with the email address and password to my vehicle that I set up when I bought that vehicle.
Car, yeah, right.
I love that cars have usernames and passwords.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. If this is a Chevy, it might be your GM OnStar account. If this is a Volkswagen, it might be your CarNet account. This is my Tesla Motors account. And
do you have a Tesla?
we did drive we drove an Audi up here actually, but we do have a couple Teslas at the office. Cool.
So that's what they do with the savings from using serverless. is they buy
Exactly.
Teslas.
Buy
That's
Teslas.
right.
And here we'll see a really important part of our flow, which is the permission screen. A big part of Smartcar is ensuring that users have full control over what they're giving access to and who they're giving that access to.
Right.
And so we see exactly that Twitch's first app is requesting access to my Tesla, and it wants these 3 permissions. The make, model, year, it wants to know the location of the car, and it wants to know the total distance traveled. And exactly those 3 permissions. And so if I check off my 2013 Model S and say, I'm going to give it access, we press allow, we're going to get back to localhost 8000, and here we go, we got that access token that we were looking for. So copy that access token, we go back to the terminal, and I can write a little app here. We're going to import Smartcar, and we're going to set our access token equals that variable I just pulled. And then next, we're going to pull the list of vehicle IDs that are associated with that access token. So that's
yours should be in there now because
Exactly.
you authorized it.
Exactly. So here's our get vehicle IDs. Actually, I should change this to a snake case since we're in Python land over here. I always get confused when I move between languages.
Oh, yeah, I feel you on that one for sure.
Cool. So we're going to grab the first vehicle ID out of that response. So it's just an object that has vehicles.
Pollux wants you to know that he's full respect for the live coding.
And then we're going to create a new vehicle instance, which is smartcar.vehicle, and we're going to give it a VID and the access token as well. So now we can do what we saw earlier. We can just say data equals vehicle.location, for example.
And then we should be able to actually see that vehicle's location.
Exactly. So let's kill that server, and we'll run Python request.py now. And now a live request is happening from here through the Smartcar cloud over down to that vehicle. And there it goes. We just pulled the latitude and longitude of the car. And we can actually copy this and look up where exactly this car is. I believe someone from the office might be driving it right now, so I think it's somewhere in San Jose, maybe. Let's pull it up. Oh, no, it's at our office right now, actually. There we go. I can zoom in.
That's
They're right
super
next to my
cool.
work pin right over there.
That's really cool.
There we go. Work. There's the car.
I mean, I love that you're able to do that in a matter of a few minutes
Like
live.
3 minutes.
Exactly.
It just shows the simplicity of using Smartcar to be able to, yeah.
Exactly, and the difference here, if you were going to a production use case, is you're not going to be copy pasting access tokens, but probably storing this in a database somewhere.
Right, obviously.
But other than that, it's really straightforward, and that was the whole goal for us. It took 10 lines or so here once you get the access token to actually make a request to a car.
So we're gonna wrap up here. We've had an amazing show. Thank you guys so much for being guests. Is there anything you want to leave our viewers with, like a link or somewhere to go to learn more, or some last-minute advice for running a startup or working at a startup?
Yeah, I can go first.
Yeah.
So definitely, we sell into commercial fleets, but if you want to know more about where to get the product, reach out at info@nauto.com.
info@nauto.com. I'm dropping that in the chat for you all.
If you want to learn more about the new product launches that are coming up, then go to our blog post. So that's www.nauto.com/blog. and we're always looking for talented engineers
Yes.
to hire. So
I was going to ask you guys that if you were hiring.
right, we've got openings in AI, in data scientist team, as well as deep learning, AI deep learning teams. So
nauto.com/jobs/careers.
/careers. Yeah, so definitely provide referrals, apply if you're looking for a job, and yeah, we've got a lot of openings.
It's Twizzy was just asking why not just go directly to the Tesla API and do the same thing. It's because it works with Jeep, Audi, BMW.
Yeah.
You write it once and it works with 13 different car manufacturers.
Exactly, and it respects the user privacy settings as they go through that authorization flow as well for the user who's authorizing their car to your application. And yeah, to reiterate every point that you said as well. To
I'll
learn
drop
more,
the links as you're saying them.
just go to
shout 'em out.
smartcar.com for really anything you need to see. For announcements and blog posts, go to smartcar.com/blog. We are definitely hiring for new engineers as well. And we are hiring on full stack and front-end developers.
What's the link for that one?
smartcar.com/careers. A really interesting one, actually, if anyone in the audience is interested, is we are hiring for a developer relations hire, which will be our first kind of outbound-faced technical person on the team.
Deborah.
So I'm not going to be on every single outbound talk show as we move forward, but we definitely want someone who'll have strong community ties to be able to go out to hackathons, to come out to events like this, and be the public face of Smartcar out
If you want
there
to be on
as
the
well.
show, apply to the dev
Yes,
position
apply.
at Smartcar.
And if you do want to build on Smartcar, you go to smartcar.com to sign up like you just saw me do, or go to smartcar.com/docs to see the full documentation.
I'll post that one too.
Thank you, both of you. Also, thank you, all the viewers, for the questions, the interaction. Really appreciate it. And next week, same time, we're going to be focused on
Same
healthcare
place.
and life sciences, so all health tech space. We have a couple of really interesting startups. So join us, join the conversation, and yeah, thank you for giving us some insight
Thank
into
you.
the auto
Thank you
tech
both
world.
so much.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
This was really great.
It was awesome. We had so much fun.
This
Thanks, guys.
This is BootUP signing off.